Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm back with another video tutorial for challenge of intermediate algorithm scripting called arguments optional. What does it say? It says create a function that sums two arguments together. If only one argument is provided, then return a function that expects one argument and returns the sum. For example, if add together method has two arguments, 2 and 3, it should return 5, which is 2 plus 3. However, if it has one argument only, which is 2, then it should return a function. So you must be thinking, well, what should that function do? Right, it tells us here. So calling this return function with a single argument, so it says that single argument will then return the sum. Cool. So it's given an example here that sum 2, that was the function, and add together 2. Alright, so this was a function, and when it was called, it returned 5. Alright, so if either argument isn't a valid number, then return undefined. Remember to use read, search, and ask if you get stuck. Try to pair program and write your own code. Right, so first of all, we're gonna start with this part here. We're gonna check. Okay, let me take a step back now. The thought process would be this. So we're gonna check if the argument passed is valid or not, right? And then we're gonna check the length of the argument. If it's 2, then we're gonna do all this. So we're gonna check if every argument passed is valid first, and then assign it to a variable. However, if the arguments are undefined, then we're just returning undefined straight away. And if all are valid, we return the sum. So in the second case, if one argument only is given, then if it's a valid argument, then we simply return the function that takes in an argument, and then we repeat this whole step here. Okay, so step 3, which is this one. So check if the newly passed argument, okay, is valid, and then we're not really gonna assign it to the variable, but we're gonna use it directly. Alright, and then we're gonna check if both the first argument and then the past argument are undefined, and if they are, then we're just returning undefined, and if all are valid, we are returning the sum. Right, so let's get down to coding now, the exciting part, isn't it? Cool. So first of all, we need to create a function in which we're going to check if the particular argument passed is valid or not. For that, I'm going to create the function which will be, let's name it as check argument, and then a function, and then I'll pass it a num. Okay, and now I want to check the type of num, so I'll use a keyword here, which is type of num is not string, as in number. Alright, oops, my bad, got to type the passed in parameter. So if this condition is true, which means that if it's a string, then I would be returning undefined. Alright, so if this condition is true, I would just return undefined. Okay, if not, then I would return a num itself. Alright, so now since this part is done, we are checking each particular argument if it's valid or not. Let's move on to the second one, which checks the length of the arguments. So for the length, I'm gonna make it a bit easier and um and create that in a separate variable. So I would say argument length, all right, in the separate one, and then I'm gonna use an object of argument to get the length of it. So arguments dot length. All right, cool. Now I think we have the arguments length. Just to confirm that we have it, let's console.log it. Argument length, and it should say 2. Why? Because there are 2 arguments here. Alright, so now the argument length is coming. Let's move on to the next one, which is the third step. In the scenario where the length is 2, so I'm gonna say over, this is being finished here, yep, over here. So if my argument length is equal to 2, then what do I want to do? So first of all, remember we said that we're gonna check if every argument pass is valid and then assign it to a variable. Yes, so we're gonna do that part now. So I'm gonna say first argument, all right, and then how are we gonna check if it's valid or not? Yep, if you said choosing the check argument function that we just created, absolutely. So check argument, and then I'm gonna pass in the first argument, which is using the arguments array and passing the first one. Alright, and I'll just expand this one a bit so we have got a bit more room to write the code. Alright, and then I'm gonna also take the second argument and check same thing, argument no, I have to do this one, second argument, which is accessible by the bracket notation of the first index. Alright, the array. Oops, I forgot to insert the s in them. Alright, so now that we have got our first argument and the second argument, and we're also checking that if they are both valid or not, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna check if they are undefined or not. Alright, so let's do an if statement. So first argument, copy the first argument, and is this equal to undefined, or the second argument is this equal to undefined. Alright, and if any of these are undefined, then we're simply gonna return undefined. Okay, however, if they're not, then we're gonna return the sum, which is first argument plus second argument. Alright, this will essentially give us our sum. Alright, so this scenario is done now. I'll just go back to our thought process that we have already written down. So this this scenario is done. Now we're gonna come to the scenario in which only the one argument is given. Okay, so so this is the if statement for this. Okay, and this is the main statement for the argument length. So we're gonna do else. Okay, say we only have one argument now, so we're gonna get that argument with first argument, and we're gonna check if this argument is valid or not by accessing argument 0. Oops, yeah. Okay, and then we're gonna so now we have our first argument and we are doing the check as well. Do, 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 do. Okay, cool. So yep, check is there, and actually we're just doing this one. So we're first of all getting our first argument. Okay, and then we're gonna do a check on it here now. Okay, so this would be check argument and then first argument. Alright, and then if the first argument is valid, then we're gonna be returning a function. Okay, which takes in what? Yeah, the passed in argument. Argument 2 in this case. Alright. So now that we have got the arguments 2, now what we want to do is repeat these steps. So I'll just copy and paste them so we can save some time here. Yeah, here we go. So we are checking if the first argument, which is this one, is undefined, or the argument 2, change the variable here, is undefined, and then if or, okay, no and, or the argument is undefined. If any of these arguments are undefined, then we're going to simply return undefined. However, if it's not, then we're going to add the first argument and the passed in argument as well. Alright, and this should be all really for our argument scenario. Right, so now I need to work on formatting the code properly. Define. Okay, so we can do it that way. So we can get a proper read on the code. Oops. Return undefined and then else. That one goes there. Yep, yep, cool. This one's there. This needs a semicolon. Okay, first of all, I just check that if I would test passes, because if it's not, then we have done something wrong. Hopefully it passes. Ah, no. Should return undefined. Where did I go wrong? Uh, so for is that two arguments? Yep. So that's the length. Yep, one. First argument is there. Second argument is there. Yep, argument. Check argument. Yep, should be fine. Oh, we forgot to put this semicolon. My bad. Let's check. It still doesn't work. Oh, what did we do here? Um, so if the first argument is undefined, or the second argument is undefined, which is this one. Oops, forgot to put this semicolon there as well. Yep, not really. That doesn't work either. Second else, return first argument and second. Yeah, that looks fine to me. So where did I mess up? Else first argument is equal to arguments. Yep. First, if check argument is this is better than return function. Argument 2, function argument 2, yep. And then if first argument is undefined, then I need the and its second argument is undefined. Oh, I forgot to check the argument here. Check argument, yep. Check argument. Cool, that should work, because what it was, I wasn't checking the argument here again. Alright, so that should work now. Yes, nothing but nets. Brilliant, guys. Alright, so let me just go over the code once more. So first of all, what we did was checked if our arguments are valid or not. Okay, and if they weren't, we returned undefined, but if they were, then we returned the number itself. And then we created the argument's length by assigning the length of the argument's array to this variable argument length. And then we check that if two scenarios, if the argument length is equal to 2, and in some other case in which it would be equal to 1. So in here we checked if every argument passed is valid or not, and then we I mean, if it was valid, then we stored them in first argument and second argument variables, and then we checked to make sure that if the first argument and the second arguments are, I mean, or if either of the arguments are undefined, then we have to return undefined. If they weren't, then just the sum of them both arguments. Okay, and then in the case of just one argument being present, we assigned the first argument in the first argument variable and then checked if this is valid. If it was, then we are returning the function in which we passed the argument. So in this case, this was the scenario here. So if only one argument is present, then we return a function that expects one argument and returns the sum. So here we just did pass in the argument 2. Uh, I mean that pass in the parameter 2 in the function and did the same thing. If either of them are undefined, then we are returning undefined, and if not, then we are returning the sum. Cool, that's all done now. Perfect. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video and learned a bit more on how to manipulate the arguments and yeah, how to work with the arguments objects. Alright, and if you've got any comments, or if you have any questions or suggestions, leave me a comment below and I will um, get back to you as soon as possible. Until then, have fun coding and I'll see you next time, which is tomorrow.